Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist, and today I'm going to be doing a Monarch deck profile. So I'm really excited to do Monarchs for you guys because this is the budget player's best friend deck profile because it literally doesn't have to play an extra deck. You actually cannot play an extra deck if you're playing Domain Monarchs because it defeats the entire purpose of the field spell and some of your actual main deck cards. So this deck is definitely the budget player's best friend because you can just buy 3 of the structure decks and build this deck as it stands, except for the Call by the Graves that I think I play in here. And there might be 1 or 2 other cards that you actually need to pick up. But for the most part, this deck continues to get better and better on the ban list because cards continue to get unlimited and limited and semi-limited off the ban list for this deck to just thrive more and more and more. And it's not so much of a brick house anymore. So without further ado, guys, let's get straight on this. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Hit that bell on there so you can become part of the notification squad. And let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Erebus, the Underworld Monarch. So basically this one's effect is that you can tribute summon this card by tribute summoning or tributing 1 tribute summoned monster. If this card is tribute summoned, you can send 2 Monarch spell and traps with different names from your hand and or deck to the graveyard, and if you do, shuffle 1 card from your opponent's hand at random, graveyard, or their side of the field into the deck. Once per turn during either player's turn, if this card is in your graveyard, you can discard a Monarch spell or trap to target 1 card monster in your graveyard with 2400 attack or more and 1000 defense and add it to your hand. So basically recycles your other Monarchs that you have in your graveyard back to your hand so you can get more plays off of your Monarchs. And it also has a little bit of disruption where it shuffles stuff back into your opponent's deck. Then we have 3 copies of Ether, the Heavenly Monarch. Now, it has been a little while since I actually have been able to say 3 copies of Ether. This card went to 1, and then it went back to 2, and then it went back to 3, and now it's back at 3, and we got to do an update. So basically what this does is if you do the same thing, if you tribute summon a tribute summoned monster to summon this card, if this card is tribute summoned, you get to target you get to send 2 Monarch spell and traps with different names from your deck to the graveyard. And if you do, you get to special summon a 2400 attack or more, and a 1000 defense monster from your deck to your side of the field and return it to your hand during the end phase of your opponent's or during your end phase. And then during your opponent's main phase, if this card's in your hand, you can banish 1 Monarch spell or trap from your graveyard immediately after this card resolves. Tribute summon this card. This is a quick effect, which is really cool to be able to just instantly lay her on the field and then special summon 1 from the deck. Then use something like Erebus's effect to just be able to, do what you need to do and have 2 monsters on the field, which is really good to be able to do. Then we play 2 copies of Karaz, the Light Monarch. This one's a little bit of a draw power card. When it's normal summoned or special summoned, you get to target 2 cards on the field and destroy those targets. And if you do, each player that controlled that card draws 1 card. So if you target your own cards and you pop 2 cards on your side of the field, you get to draw 2 cards, which can really help you out in this deck. Because sometimes you do need to draw those cards, but you cannot attack directly during the turn. Or this card cannot attack during the turn it was normal or special summoned. Not that big of a deal. 1 copy of Majesty's Fiend, just to be able to negate monster effects, and a Vanity's Fiend, to be able to just make it so your opponent cannot special summon, or neither player can special summon for that matter, which is not that big of a deal for us, because we're not worried about that. 2 copies of Mithra, the Thunder Vassal. Mithra, the Thunder Vassal, is a really good card because she basically special summons herself from the hand, if you don't have any cards in your extra deck, and then if you do, you can special summon a Vassal token to your opponent's side of the field, which is not that big of a deal because you can just attack it. And if this card is tribute summoned if this card is tributed for a tribute summon, you can activate this effect. You can tribute summon 1 monster during your main phase in addition to your normal summoner set. So it gives you an additional tribute summon, which is really good. But the special summon ability is really nice because then you can just instantly tribute it and get off another play. 3 copy of Idolus, the Underworld Squire. This gives you an additional normal summon, and you can also banish it from the graveyard to special summon 1, or get to target a monster with 800 attack and 1000 defense in your grave, and instantly special summon it in defense position, which is really good to be able to do that, to be able to revive something like Ida, the Heavenly Squire, or Ida, the Heavenly Squire, which really helps out in this deck, because if she's normal summon, you can special summon a monster with 800 attack and 1000 defense from your deck in defense position. She also has the ability that if she's sent to the graveyard, you can target 1 of your banished Monarch spell and trap cards and add it back to your hand, which is really beneficial with Pantheism being able to draw cards. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells, which should go fairly quickly. So for the spells, and I have to recommend for you guys, if you're trying to teach somebody how to play Yu-Gi-Oh, this is definitely one of the decks I would pick up to try and teach somebody, because you don't even have to worry about extra deck mechanics. You just worry about tribute summoning. This is like, I'm not going to say it to insult any Monarch players, but it is almost caveman Yu-Gi-Oh, because you're not having to get into the extra deck at all. It's really good for somebody who's just starting out or just wants to play casually. But this deck can actually win locals, which is awesome. Or even get into a regionals, which it did, and actually top at one point. So we're going to be playing one copy of Rhoda. Rhoda basically searches our Heavenly Squire, which is the only target, and you basically are playing 4 copies of her. One copy of Pantheism. I really hope that this card comes back off the list, which I think it will. I think they're kind of slowly reintroducing Monarch cards. I think it should come back to 2 next. But basically, you send a Monarch spell trap from your hand to the graveyard, and then you draw 2 cards, and you can banish this card from your graveyard to reveal 3 Monarch spell and traps from your deck, and your opponent randomly chooses 1 and adds it to your hand, and then you can shuffle the back and rest back in your deck, and you can only use this effect of Pantheism once per turn. One copy of March. March lets your tribute summon monsters cannot be targeted or destroyed by card effects, and you cannot special summon monster from your extra deck. 2 copies of Return. Return, basically all that text is meaningless, because what I'm going to tell you really quickly. If you tribute summon a monster, a Mega Monarch, which is 28,000, you get to add a Little Monarch with 1,024. If you tribute summon one that's 24,000, you get to add the 28,000. So you basically, if you tribute summon this one, you get to add one of the big ones. If you tribute summon a big one, you get to add a little one. That's basically how the Return of the Monarch works, in a nutshell. 3 copies of Domain, which is the best card in the entire deck, and I cannot emphasize that enough. Domain of the Monarchs is crazy. When you have no cards in your extra deck, see, that's why you don't play an extra deck. When you have no cards in your extra deck, and you're the only player that controls a tribute summon monster, your opponent cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck. And if a tribute summoned monster you control attacks an opponent's monster, you automatically get to inflict 800 points of, or gains 800 attack. And then during damage calculation, only once per turn, you can reduce the level of one monster with 2,800 attack and 1,000 defense in your hand by 2, basically making your big ones level 6 to be able to tribute summon them for 1 less tribute, and then until the end phase of the turn, which is really good. 3 copies of Tenacity, which is our searcher of the deck. Tenacity basically says, hey, reveal one of your Monarchs in your hand, except for Vanity's Fiend, which sucks because it has 1,200 defense. Reveal any of your Monarchs in your hand, or Vanity's Majesty's Fiend in your hand, and then add a Monarch spell trap from your deck to your hand. Any one you want. 3 copies of Stormforth, which I'm so glad this card is still at 3. Basically lets you tribute your opponent's monsters to tribute summon your monsters. And then finally, for the last 3, we're playing 3 copies of Called by the Grave to round out the entire spell lineup. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. And I have to say that the best card probably out of all these is probably Stormforth, because you'll just be able to tribute your opponent's monsters. That's really nuts. But if you open like a Domain and a Stormforth and a Vanities, you're gonna win. I mean, your Majesties, you're gonna win, because all you have to do, if you're going, even if you're going second, if you open up this and your opponent doesn't stop it, okay, and your opponent has not established a decent board, you go Domain, tribute your opponent's big monster, and then summon Vanity's Fiend. And they can't special summon from the extra deck, or not even this one, not Vanity's Fiend, Majesty's Fiend, this one. Now your opponent can't activate monster effects, they can't special summon from the extra deck, and you're just like, hey, what are you going to do now? So this is like the best 3-card combo in the entire deck. So for the traps, we're going to be playing 1 Escalation, which lets us tribute during your opponent's main phase or battle phase, and then 2 copies of the Monarchs Erupt. Monarchs Erupt is awesome, because if you control a tribute summon monster and you have no monsters in your extra deck, your opponent cannot activate, you negate the effects of all face-up monsters on the field. You just negate them all, which is not that big of a deal for us. And then finally, for the last 2 cards, we're playing 2 copies of Prime. Prime, if it's on the field, you get to target 2 Monarch spell traps in your grave, shuffle them into the deck, and then you get to draw. And if it's in your graveyard, you can banish 1 other Monarch spell trap and then special summon it on the field to use it as fodder to be able to tribute summon our Monarchs, which is really nice to have this in the grave and then banish something like Escalation that's already been used in the grave. to be able to just instantly get us more plays. So this card is really, really, really good. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you enjoyed this one. It's pretty easy to understand this deck. Basically, you just tribute summon until your opponent can't do anything, and you just beat over your opponent's monsters, which is really, really, really fun to do because it's like old school Yu-Gi-Oh when it first came out, but faster. This is actually hands down one of my favorite decks. I love Monarchs because they're so cool. Like, he doesn't care about anything. Like, he's just sitting there on his throne like, hey, yeah, I'm going to win. Or I'm going to live in my brick house. One of the two. Either way, I'm going to be fine. So, anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Definitely tell me what you think of this video down in the comments down below. Hit that bell notification, become part of the notification squad, and I will see you guys in the next video. See you around, guys.